food is always very interesting. My favorite, hands down, favorite Brazilian food is called feijoada, and it's like this Brazilian black bean soup, and depending on who makes it, like there's lots of meat and like sausage and bacon in it. Sometimes they put a pig head in it and like pig feet and stuff, which sounds really gross, but it's so good. And it's just, I always feel after I eat, I always feel like I do after Thanksgiving. You're just like so tired, you're just like, oh, I could sleep forever. But it's just got this really good taste, and they eat it over rice and with like kale or collard greens and then orange slices. But that was really only special occasions. And so like normally every day we would have rice and beans and chicken and some type of salad and maybe some pasta. So like they would have a green salad, usually with like tomatoes and onions and green peppers sliced over them, and just put a little bit of olive oil and salt. Or there was a potato and beet and carrot salad mixed with mayonnaise. Fruit salad was very common. They eat a lot of things with like condensed milk. So they would just like have fruit salad and just pour that all over it, or table cream. They would do that too. There came a point where we were just like, okay, rice and beans, it's pretty alright. Like I could still eat it every single day, but there came a point where I was like, okay, I think I want a break. And that would like be a random day when somebody would make something different. I'm like, okay, I'm good again. But every day that's what we eat. It's a very, very much a staple. But like you feel so good after you eat it, because it's just like healthy food. Because unless you're in the bigger city, a lot of them don't have money to go out and like buy fast food or like to buy all this processed food. And so it was really good because we'd eat. They made us eat so much food. Like there was a point where we finally got away with eating one plate, but if you let them make it for you, they pile it so high. And so we would try to make our own plates, but and then there's mousse de maracujá, passion fruit mousse. I love that stuff, but it like makes you tired after you eat it, so we tried not to eat a ton of it. In one of the areas that I served in, they have this, I don't even know what it is, but it's like this ball and they call it piqui. And you just, like if you crack it open, there's like a little cashew nut inside of all of these spines, but like if you just throw it in there whole, it like just adds this flavor to the food. And at first I despised it. Like whenever anybody would make something with it, I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna have to like suffer through lunch today. But it was, like I ended up liking it, but for about 3 months out of 1 year, it was piqui season. And so they would just go and like they'd be selling it on the sidewalk, and there'd just like be this smell down the street, and you're like, oh, I don't want to walk down that street. But I ended up really liking it after we ate it at one member's house. So there was that. So that took some getting used to. But I think that's only in the Northeast. And then they have this fruit called cajá, and that's only in the Northeast too. And I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like a little piece of heaven in your mouth. And like they normally just like take either frozen pulp or like the fruit itself, and they just throw it together and make juice. So good. There's lots of stuff. But those were probably my favorites. So it was like they just made their juice and then just like rice and beans. I could eat that all the time. Like even now when I go to a Mexican restaurant, I'm like, rice and beans. The one food that I never tried, that I never ever want to try, is called buchada. And I remember we used to walk past this little corner shop that sold it, and it smelled so bad. But like they take, I think it's like beef stomach, and they just like chop up intestines and stuff and make a stew and put it in it and sew it up. I never had a desire to try it. And then there's something called panelada, which I think is almost the same thing, but that's just like a stew-ish. I've never eaten it. I never wanted to, and nobody was ever mean enough to make me eat it. Because like in Brazil, if they offer you food, like you can say no, but like it's really rude. And so they offer it to you. You're just like, yeah, thank you so much. Unless you know it's something you're allergic to, then you can just say no. And I remember they had a lot of fruit trees everywhere, like mango trees and papaya trees, and they have this thing called graviola, and it's like this green like skin on the outside, and then inside it's just white with black seeds. So good. They had those trees. And we taught this couple who they took care of like this rich person's land, and so they had orange trees and guavas, and they had this fruit called pitomba. And it's just like in this hard shell, and you crack it open, and it looks like a peeled grape with a seed inside of it. It's so good. And so I just loved it because like, oh, they had this stuff too. I don't remember the name of it. Carambola? Maybe. But it like, I think it was star fruit. It's pretty much star fruit. And one of our families had a tree in their backyard, so they just let us go pick it. And then they had coconuts, oh, fresh coconuts. Like they would pick them from the tree, and like sometimes they'd one convert, he just like picked it off the tree and he peeled it for us right there and just gave it to us. But if you went down the street, like there'd be all these little stands, like, and you'd stick it in the freezer and they'd pull it out and pop a hole in the top and you just drink the milk out of it. Oh my gosh. So good. Best cure for an upset stomach. So good. So many things. Mango trees too. I remember we were walking back from an area from an investigator's house, and we saw these 2 mango trees just in the middle of nowhere, and like, hey, free mangoes. And so we go and pick them, and I didn't realize that I'm allergic to the sap that's on them. Like, I can eat them, it's totally fine, but like if I get the sap on me, and so normally if you leave the sap on you, it burns you a little bit. But the next day, like, we've been carrying them for like 4 or 5 hours, and the next day I woke up and I had like hives everywhere, and there were burns in the hives, and like my face was swollen, and I had to go get a shot in a very undesirable part of my body to make it go away. It was, but the food is so good. Like, and everybody has their own little spice that they add to it. I don't really know the difference between any foods from like, besides those from the north to the south, but I know that they call them different things, so I probably know what they are, but I just don't know what they're called in other parts of Brazil. Like they make this corn stuff with cinnamon on top, and in Fortaleza it's called one thing, and in São Paulo it's called another thing, but it's the same food. So
Brazilian food. A staple at every meal is going to be beans and rice. If they don't have rice, they'll have beans and pasta, which is really strange at first, but it's actually really good. It's a little hard to manipulate with like a spoon and a fork, but really, really good food. So that's the basics of every Brazilian meal. And even if you go to a fancy restaurant, people will get beans and rice. That's just it's like water. You have to have it. Fruits are very just, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very abundant there. You find them all over the place. People make fresh juices all the time, and you won't want it any other way. They're delicious. And they just pretty much, they'll cut up a fruit, throw it in a blender with some sugar and water, and bam, it's delicious. You get some really fun fruits too, like star fruit and passion fruit, which is divine, but it's a natural kind of like, sedative in a sense. Like it's kind of like a natural sleeping pill in a sense. You drink it, and the next like hour is gonna be rough. Trying to like stay awake and tracked. Just like every fruit, there's like so many different fruits that I was kind of blown away. There's just all sorts of fun things. And then there's like meat. You generally have like a meat, dish with your meal, be it chicken or pork or beef. That's always nice. You gotta have your meat. You have some sort of like salad in a sense, which they always I guess garnish your salad with like olive oil and vinegar, or just olive oil and salt, which is so good. It sounds weird, but I do it to this day because it's so good. It's simple. There are some Brazilian foods which are different, just traditionally, Brazil has a really large African, I guess you could say African ancestry influence in this, a lot of during the slave trade, they brought a lot of Africans over to Brazil. And so Brazil has just rich culture. And one thing that Africans brought with them were kind of these like some interesting eating habits in a sense, like things like eating the cow stomach and like eating all the weird parts of like the pig, like the ears and the knuckles and the nose. And so a lot of these foods, which aren't really eaten a lot anymore, are kind of traditional in a sense. There's a really common food called feijoada, and it consists of like black beans mixed in with like pig ears and pig knuckles and all the weird parts of the animal that like no one would want, because that's what slaves ate. They ate the leftovers that no one wanted. But it's such a big part of Brazilian culture now that they make it, of course, nowadays, but they use like the good parts of the animals. They use like kind of like dehydrated meats to cook in there with it so they don't like fall apart. It's super good. It's so good. Pretty much, of course, like every culture, there are kind of like rules and standards to how to interact, and refusing someone's food is super rude. So never do it. I don't care how picky you are or how hungry you might not be, just eat it, Yeah, that's kind of food in a nutshell.
I was a very picky eater before my mission. I liked meat, potatoes, and bread. And my mom said, I hope you go somewhere foreign where they can really expand your palate. And I said, okay. And so I got down there, and rice and beans, I didn't really like rice and beans before my mission either, but now I love it. I can't live without them. But they had this one food that would be kind of like the lasagna of America, where everyone eats lasagna here. They all love it. There they call it feijoada. And it's so common. And it's like, it was a slave food originally, because the slaves would cook for their masters, and they would give them all the good parts of the pig, like the bacon, the hindquarters, everything that was good about the pig, they would give to their masters, and what was left over, they would make their food out of. So like the snout, the tongue, the ear, the tail, the foot, all that they threw into a pot and cooked it. And that became feijoada. And now everyone, most of Brazilians are descendants from slaves, so they eat this food called feijoada. And I remember my first time eating the MTC, and it was all rubbery because it's mostly fat, and I just like, oh, I cannot eat this for 2 years. I would fast that day in the MTC because I didn't want to eat that food. But now I love it. I loved it as soon as I got out of the mission field, and it was different because different people liked different ways. They would be like, oh, I like mine with a little pig's foot, and other people, oh, I don't like pig's foot. It's too heavy for me. And it was interesting to see how they would talk about their food, and I remember they don't waste anything. Any part of the animal they use. Like, I had never eaten cow's foot before in my entire life, and there I got it, and it's called mokoto. And there are different ways to prepare it, but the most common is they make it into a broth, like a very sweet soup, like the ligaments and everything, it'll get all cooked together, and at least this really nice soup. My first time eating mokoto, the member literally just took a cow's foot and cooked it. So I'm sitting there, I'm starving, and I have my rice and beans ready, and she just, bam, cow's foot. Just an actual, like, you picture cow's foot in real life, put that on a plate. And I looked at my companion, I go, Elder, we're going to eat this? He's like, with a smile on your face, Elder. And so it's just, different people interpret the foods there differently. And so I ate it, and it was not the best food I've ever eaten. But then I got the other mokoto where they make it into like a soup, and I loved it. And so it was very different to see the different types of foods that they would make. I mean, I ate chicken's feet. I've eaten every single part of a pig you can imagine. I've eaten bull's intestines with their tongues cooked inside of it, and it sounds gross, but it's really good. And it's totally different to come back home and to be totally fearless in eating any kind of food. If you don't tell me what it is, I'll eat it. And so my favorite food, I think, that I learned was, I think feijoada was probably my favorite. But what was interesting is that there, if you offer someone an egg, like a fried egg, you are calling that person poor, because eggs down there are for only poor people. They're very cheap. And so if you only eat eggs, you are poor. And for us missionaries, we were poor, so we loved it. And so we loved fried eggs and ground beef with bread. That's what we ate a lot of the times at home. Not in the members' houses, of course. And so it was very interesting when I remember when I would Skype my family, and they would say, really, eggs are for poor people down there? That's interesting. And so it's just different because we would say, oh, food stamps are for people in poverty. I feel like that's what it would be in Brazil is, oh, you eat eggs and bread, you're on food stamps. And it's just a different way to see how they lived and how they categorized different foods. I remember I once in a very wealthy house. It was the most rich person I've ever met in my entire mission. And they had like this huge old table full of all this beautiful food, but no rice and beans, which is a staple food for them because it fills you up and it's very cheap. Every Brazilian eats rice and beans, but not the rich, because it's, I don't want to say beneath them, but it's just that they can buy higher quality things like, I don't know, noodles, like very expensive pastas or something like that. They don't need rice and beans. And I remember sitting at this table and I felt out of place because there was no rice and beans. I was like, we left the house, like my companion, I go, are you still hungry? And he goes, yeah. I go, because there were no rice and beans, we're not full. And it was very different. And the family would be sitting there and they'd be like, oh, I can't remember the last time I had rice and beans. And I was offended. I was like, I had rice and beans this morning with a fried egg. So I'm the poorest of the poor. But the food there, you can tell how humble a person is. Like, and they won't admit, if you meet a poor person on the street, they will give you the best of what they have. So if the best is what they have is a fried egg and ground beef, and they are offering that means they are very, very, very poor. And they were willing to give you anything. I remember in my first area in that favela, this lady we were teaching, she worked at a family's home in a very far away place, and she had to travel like 3 or 4 buses in a metro to get there. And I remember that night we were going to teach her, and she sat us down. She said, I have a surprise for you. And she goes in the kitchen, comes back out with her hands behind her back, and she pulls out 2 fruit drinks, one for me, one for my companion. And the eyes of her children just like got as big as dinner plates. Like, they wanted that drink. And she probably worked like an extra 5 or 6 hours to get that enough money to buy that drink for us. And it actually was a very terrible drink. It wasn't good at all, but I drank everything, and I gave the drink to her kids because I just couldn't stand having them look at me like that and not share. And that they would work so hard for someone, a foreigner nonetheless, to come into their home, teach them a foreign doctrine, and then they would work that much harder just to buy us a little thing, and just to show their appreciation. And it was amazing to me.
It's rice and beans all day and every day. I mean, it's rice and beans for lunch, for dinner, if you have dinner. But anytime you go to a member's house, they will give you rice, beans, some sort of meat, probably a salad, and soda. That's kind of the standard. I mean, there are variations from that. It's not a hard and fast rule, but you'll always have rice and beans. And then beyond that, it's kind of to the members' creativity. But you'll grow to love it. I mean, it's good food. It might get monotonous after a while, but thankfully the variation in the other things can make up for it. There's a soda that every Brazilian missionary talks about called Guaraná. It's pretty delicious. I mean, it comes from a berry that we don't have here, the Guaraná berry, and it's a great way to get cavities. It's a great way to ruin your teeth just because it's so easy to drink so much of it. But there are, endless variations of Guaraná. I think there's about 7 major brands of Guaraná and, 10 minor ones. Probably the best meals, the actual meals that I had a lot of fried chicken. It's easy, it's cheap, it's good stuff. But the best meals I had were feijoada, which is like a black bean stew with every piece of the pork you can imagine put into it. If you get someone who's from the Northeast, like traditional Northeast, you might find an ear or a hoof or something floating in it. It's normal. Don't worry about it. Just eat it and ignore it. But it's really delicious. It's really easy to get full on. And you always just keep eating more. There's also something called pirão, which is like, I'm not sure how to describe it. They take like the juice of meat, the meat juice, I guess is a better way to say it. They take meat juice and they mix it in with a type of tapioca flour. It's called manioc flour. They're made from the same root, but they're slightly different in the way they're produced. And they make it into this paste. And I don't know why, but it's delicious. I mean, it's just this like meat paste. And you stick it on top of your rice and beans and you mix it in with everything and you eat it. It's just so good. That one's really easy to eat as well, just to keep eating and not stop. But the desserts are where you're going to get in trouble if you have to walk a lot that day. There's pujim de leche, which is like, I think they call it flan here. I don't know. It's like a little flan with syrup drizzled on it, and it's wonderful. It's rich. It's creamy. It's eggy. It's everything you'd ever want. They also have mousse, which is like mousse, but they make it out of fruit usually. So you'll have passion fruit mousse. You'll have strawberry mousse. You'll have lemon mousse, lime mousse. The distinction between lemon and lime in Brazil is very thin, if non-existent. It's pretty much the same fruit. Like, if you try and tell someone about a lemon, they'll just be like, oh yeah, it's a lime. Like, well, it's not a lime, it's kind of a yellow lime. All right, so it's a lime. Oh well, but they make lots of mousse out of that. Brazilians also love stroganoff, and it's a classic meal to give to the missionaries. And it's just, bits of meat in a nice creamy sauce, and you put it on top of the rice. You can have beans with it, but it's kind of strange. And then they'll put little shoestring potatoes on top of it. It's fantastic. It was always my favorite day whenever there was stroganoff, because it's just so good, and it fills you up so well. It's easy to make too.
Oh, I love Brazilian food. So it's just like every meal, there's always, they basically have always rice, beans, a meat, and a salad. Always. And you're like, whoa. And sometimes a pasta. So lunches will be huge. So rice and beans, they have this special way of cooking rice where they saute the garlic and onions first, and then put in the rice and fry the rice a little bit, and then cook it and put water in it, and it's so good. And then their beans, they mix so much spices, and not spicy spices, but just normal spices, and then it's also like the best beans I've probably ever had. And then the meat, they always get like steak, or usually it's steak. Sometimes it's chicken, because the sisters are like, oh, we know you get steak, and we know you guys like to keep your figures, so we're giving you chicken. And we're just like, thanks. And then always a pasta, and then their salad, they season it really differently. They put oil and vinegar and mix that with that, and then put salt all over it. So I don't know if it's healthy, but it's salad, and it tastes really good. And they have like street food. They have pão de queijo, which is like a cheese ball. It's a lot better than it sounds. So those are really good. There's coxinhas, which I don't know how to explain. Sometimes on the side they have a churrasquinha, where they just sell meat, and they put like either steak on a steak, or chicken on a steak, or chicken heart on a steak, which is actually really good. And then juices. Oh, every time you go into a sister's house, she'd be like, let me make fresh juice for you guys. So we get they always get like fresh lemons or fresh maracujá, which is a really good fruit. That's my favorite. And they'd always make fresh juice for you, and I loved it. Oh, I loved it so much. Oh, what else with the food? Oh, the buffets. They have like an all-you-can-eat buffet for like 5 to 10 reais. And it's amazing because that's only like $2 or $3 in the US. So you get all this really good food for like $2 or $3. So it's amazing. They really like their food there, and it's so good. So good.
Well, Brazilian food's awesome. I love it. We have I think my favorite thing was churrasco, which is the barbecue. And it's not like the barbecues here, although I love barbecue, American barbecues too. But there, they just put on meat and they put on salt, and you're good. And it's so good. So that was always a special experience when we had a churrasco. That was kind of like, oh, elders, I want to invite you over and I want to do barbecue for you guys. And that's kind of, wow, that's special. But mostly the meals there, almost every day on my mission, we had, like I said, the church is strong there. There's lots of members, and they love the missionaries. So pretty much every day we have lunch with a member. Lunch is their main meal. So we would never have dinner with a member unless it's a special kind of birthday party or a family home evening. Those are very common. But it's never a huge meal either. It's usually lunch is their huge meal, which kind of makes it hard because then you're stuffed and you go to the streets at 1 o'clock and the sun is just beating down on you, and it makes it difficult sometimes, but it's good. I like the food. Mostly you're going to sit down, and on the table there's going to be rice, there's going to be beans, and there's going to be sometimes some type of meat. And that's what you're going to get every day for 2 years. Rice, beans, some type of meat, whether it be chicken. In Ceará, they have lots of chicken, but sometimes it's beef, and it's really good. I like it when they have linguiça, which is kind of like a sausage. But they also do lots of cool dishes. Just the other day, we had my roommates and I, who also served in Fortaleza, we all went up to an old bishop that I served with. He moved here to the United States, and we had feijoada, which is kind of this bean dish when you put bacon in it and you put linguiça in it, which is like sausage and lots of different meat, and it's just this black, really good bean dish, and you put it on rice and you just go to town. It's really good. I love it. It's thick though, so you can't eat too much of it, but it's super good. And then something they have there, especially in Fortaleza, is they have really good juices. It's a tropical climate, so they have juices, and they make it, fresh, right from the fruit, and it's really good. And they also have Guaraná, which is the big soda there, which is big all over Brazil. They have lots of different things for just Fortaleza, but I really love the food, and the members are so great. I mean, I was always I was amazed, but also humbled, because a lot of times a lot of the members didn't have much, but we would come and it was like a feast for us, and we just, it really just so humbling to see the importance they give to missionary work, and it kind of helps you, like, wow, like they take our calling seriously, and so we really got to work for them to really see the love that they have for the missionaries, and it kind of is an incentive to be like, wow, I have to be the best missionary I can be, because they give so much to us, and it's just really great. The members absolutely love having the missionaries over, so it's always a really special experience. They usually have their friends over, and it's great for a missionary opportunity too. So lunches were some of my best memories in Brazil, was eating lunch with the members, and incredible food, and I loved it. There's just so much good stuff, and the great thing I loved about it was it's kind of the members. It's their opportunity to kind of show us their culture too. So they take pride in it, and they really love giving us the local dishes. There's a few dishes that they like giving us foreigners, because usually it's pretty gross, and even they don't like it that much, but it's kind of their tradition. It's kind of the things of a cow or things of a goat that no one really likes. But back in the day of ranching in Ceará is when people would eat it. So it's kind of their tradition. And they'd kind of offer it to us as, kind of like, oh, let's see their reaction. But that's always fun. I mean, that's part of the experience, and you got to try it. Why not? You're going to have a great drink, a fruit drink to wash it down. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I really loved enjoying, eating with the members was some of the best experiences of a mission, and investigators as well. And the investigators, oh, you're from the United States. Well, I'm going to invite you over. We're going to have a meal from Ceará, And so, the investigators a lot of times ask you for lunch or invite you to lunch too. And sometimes you got to talk to a member like, oh, I had an investigator invite me. Can we eat lunch with you this other day? And so sometimes you have to, say thanks to the members, but we have an investigator that invited us for lunch. It was the best of both worlds. So, so really great experiences with food, and that's a big part of their culture as well, as the food.
I loved a lot of the Brazilian food. You have your staple, rice and beans. You will eat rice and beans every single day. Occasionally, on a Sunday or something, they'll have some spaghetti or something ready for you. And then they'll often have rice and beans on the side as well. So that is your staple. You eat that all the time. In fact, Brazilians often don't consider it a meal, a complete meal, unless there are rice and beans there. And they have tons of traditional little dishes. It's funny. I think people often see America as a very large, obese kind of country, though I don't really find it. Brazilians also kind of are just as chubby as we are oftentimes. And it's funny because America often gets that because of sugar input. And personally, I eat tons of ice cream, pie, whatever. I love my little treats. Whereas Brazil, lots of times you find lots of fried foods that create the same thing. So you find fried little snacks that you can get on the street for cheap. One of my favorites, which was called coxinha, and actually learned how to make them, are these little chicken snack things, I guess. There's a potato-based dough that is filled on the inside with seasoned chicken, shredded chicken, and then some cheese sometimes, and then wrapped up in this very specific teardrop shape, and then breaded and fried, and they are delicious. Something that everyone will grab just as a little snack on the road. Brazil especially has lots of these little snack places because lunch is their main thing. Sometimes you'll have a little bit of breakfast, but lunch was everything. Missionaries especially, we'd eat 2-3 plates sometimes of food, and big plates, so you get quite a bit of food, and then you just eat as much as you could. Lots of times, if I ate breakfast, it was something very small, a piece of bread, an egg or two, maybe some cereal, though I didn't eat tons of cereal on my mission. Most of it was just waiting until lunch, where you would fill up completely, and that would pretty much last you until the next lunch. We didn't stop for dinner a lot of time. We would go right through, and we would often buy little snacks at the bakery or little stores on the side of the road, or we'd go into a grocery store for some little cookies, and just something quick that we can eat on the go and then just keep working. Because there is so much to be done. They have tons of traditional dishes as well, and you will just find every kind of meat imaginable. I used to laugh about it because in the US, you walk into a typical meat section and you see what's normal to us. You see some ground beef, you see some chicken legs, thighs, breasts, you see steak and pork. And maybe a little extra, but nothing very odd outside of that. Whereas in Brazil, if you go down the aisle in a grocery store, you will see cow tongue, you will see chicken feet, you will see intestines and stomach and ears and tails, and they even use cow feet oftentimes. There's a special soup there that they take just above the knee and of a cow, and they'll chop it up and put it in a soup, and it's delicious. It's really good. They'll often make one of their main Brazilian dishes is called feijoada, and feijoada is actually a traditional slave dish, where long time ago the slaves would they wouldn't have very much meat. All the nice meats would go to their masters, and they would be left with this kind of poor meat. Oftentimes ear, tail, intestines, stomach, and just the fatty parts that people didn't want to eat. And they eventually made it into a soup kind of thing. And so feijoada is black beans and tons of water, and you cook all your meats in that water. So all your meats are very juicy. They're not dry. They're just packed with water, which gives it a very different taste, and also just makes it super heavy. So we'd have feijoada every once in a while, and it's hot, and it stays hot in your stomach, but it's also just weighs you down a ton. So they'd find little different ways, putting in some orange slices or potatoes, and they had some tricks for getting out some of that heaviness you felt and the salt content. But it's a delicious meal, and you find it very hard to walk after eating it. And I often found that some of my favorite parts of that meal in particular was cowtail. I thought cowtail was delicious. It's just very tender, melts in your mouth. It's a very small part of the animal, obviously, so there's not a ton of it around, but every once in a while you get a good piece, and it's delicious. There were some meats that I was not ready for, that I did not care for, cow stomach especially. I ate a soup once where he had chopped up stomach along with these big white beans and stuck it in the special soup that they have. It's very typical for the north of Brazil especially. And the soup itself was delicious, the beans, everything. Getting to that meat though was hard to stomach. Well, no pun intended, but just the stomach lining in and of itself has a very weird texture that you're not prepared for. What else? One of the strangest meats I think I ate, and just foods in general, was blood sausage, where they'd take the blood from a cow, all the leftover blood, and they'll often leave it in a basin until it gets pretty thick, and they'll make sausage out of it. And you can season it just right, and it tastes really good. Both that is very categorized with liver as well, where it's just a very rich meat, so it's hard to eat a ton of it, but it's delicious what you do eat. Beyond that, you find everything is based around beans and rice. So you'll sometimes get a meat on the side, a steak or a chicken. Sometimes instead of beans, you'll have what we called stroganoff, and they'd have this tomato-based paste with some cream, and they'd put chicken and seasons and spices and stuff in with it, and you just pour it on top of your rice. Pretty much everything goes on top of your rice. I mean, feijoada, you just pour on top. That other soup with the cow stomach, you just pour on top of rice. Stroganoff as well, pour on top of rice. Pretty much everything does. And they will mix all their food together. So even if you serve yourself sometimes with like rice, and then you put your wet stuff, whatever it is, main on top of that, maybe your salad on the sides, Brazilians will often just mix it all together and eat it as is. So it's a very efficient, I guess, approach to it. And it's something I kind of learned to do a little bit as well. I learned to just kind of mix my food together. Salad in particular was very much different from what we find. There often weren't dressings. They'd often use what I now love to use, which is just a little bit of lime juice, water, and salt poured on top. And salad for them is extremely basic. It's normally lettuce, chopped lettuce, chopped tomatoes, some chopped onions, maybe some cucumbers, maybe. But often it was just those three mixed together and tossed around. You'd find all sorts of different treats on the side of the road. There are always people selling. Brazil has a huge variety of desserts as well. You find these little chocolate, kind of like fudge, called brigadeiro, and they're delicious. You'll find them made of a coconut base, of a vanilla base, with this chocolate base. You can find cakes of all sort, pies. They love to do puddings and jello, and we've researched all sorts of stuff on our missions especially. Brazilian people love to pamper the missionaries, and they will often give as much as they can. Some of the poorest people, in fact, will just give everything. They will offer to give lunch one time a month for the missionaries, or as much as they can, and they will just give, oftentimes it's something very simple, just rice, beans, and a little bit of chicken, but they just give as much as they can to the missionaries. They love them so much. And other times you will find richer families who just go all out, and they will give you some extravagant kind of food and just tons of it as well. In one of my areas, there was a lady, and she just loved to feed the missionaries. And we'd go over and we'd find 2 different kinds of pastas with 2 different sauces. We'd find a huge salad. There would be chicken and steak and what they beef enrolada, which was just, they'd wrap beef around some vegetables, some carrots or something, and stick a toothpick in it and bake it as is. And she would make fried potatoes, French fries on top of that, have several different kinds of drink, and normally a cake and a flan or something. And it was incredible how much food there was. And one of the jokes we have on missions, or especially in São Paulo, was that there are always those typical lines that a sister in a ward will say to you. And always be like, "Elder, did you not like my food? Elder, eat more. Oh, I knew so-and-so, Elder, that he used to eat 4 plates of food. You've only eaten 2. Come on, you have to eat more." They'd always tease you about it. And it grew to be just a joke on the mission. We'd always say that. Ah, you didn't like my food? What is this? On top of that, Brazilians are well known for their juice as well. And you will find every kind of juice imaginable. I mean, what few people know is cashew. The nut is actually basically the stem of a cashew fruit that is grown a ton in the north of Brazil. And they will make cashew fruit juice. Well, juice the fruit and get a delicious juice out of it. You have guava juice, you have pineapple. They'll just put pineapple in a blender and make juice out of it. You have orange juice all the time. You will find shakes made with bananas. You will find lime juice is extremely popular there. They don't have lemons as much. It's extremely rare to find a lemon, but they make tons of lime juice, and that was one of my favorites. They put some lime juice in, they make it all frothy, maybe put a little cream in there, and tons of sugar, and it was just delicious. You'd have lots of soda as well. Brazilians love their Coca-Cola, and there it's made with pure sugar, and it's a lot better than the Coke we get here in America a lot of the time. And one of their favorite sodas, which is actually it's one of mine too, it's called Guaraná. And it's a little little red berry that you find mostly in the north of Brazil, and they just export it everywhere. And they make this soda out of it that you can find sometimes here in the States even, but it is delicious. It's nothing like you've ever tried. Brazil is just very rich in fruits, especially. Their land is extremely fertile. Even going to the Amazon rainforest, you see all the variety and stuff, and it's because Brazilian land in and of itself is very fertile. They do not have a great political situation, which has hindered them immensely, but the earth is extremely rich. And one of my favorite treats was called acai. I don't actually know how you say it in English. I think it's acai or maybe it's just acai berry. And they make an ice cream out of it, basically. And you put granola on top of that. You put bananas, strawberries, whatever you want along with it, and it is delicious. It is a cold treat.
In Brazil, stereotypical food is rice and beans, and every meal you eat with a member, you will eat rice and beans. And in Brazil, they do take good care of the missionaries. You get fed every single day, and if an appointment falls through, they'll send money so you don't have to go without. And it got to the point where if I didn't eat rice and beans for lunch, which is the big meal in Brazil, that's their dinner, is lunch. If I didn't eat rice and beans, I didn't feel like I really ate. I kind of felt like I ate a light snack. And so the days that we would get money, we would make, macaroni, or we would do something for ourselves for lunch. But if we didn't have rice and beans, I don't know. I just didn't felt like I was really fed that day. I think that rice and beans was a great food. Definitely got used to it. It's good. There's a reason they love it so much. So it's not something that's going to be bland eating every day. And it definitely gives you the energy to really work hard and out in the sun. Had lots of good food experiences in Brazil. When they have their barbecues, something that's common is chicken heart, which I ended up liking a lot more than I thought I would. I remember one lunch, he had them all on like a shish kebab, and they were like 4 hearts to a stick, and I ate like 5 of those, and it was good. I don't know. Let's see. So we had chicken heart, we had liver, we had chicken lung with something I had once, which I didn't particularly enjoy. I remember just cutting it up into really small pieces, mixing it up with the rest of my food, and then putting some hot sauce on it. Brazilians, we usually have hot sauce on the dinner table, and so that's something, if you don't like the food, you can always mask it with hot sauce, and no one will get offended. They just think, oh, he just really likes hot sauce. So that's something that could get you out of a potentially embarrassing situation of not enjoying the food too much. So yeah, heart, lung, liver, feijoada is a meal. It's just this big stew, and they just put everything in it. So there was pig snout and pigtail and pig ear in it. Pig ear was kind of fatty. And then also there's a food called mocoto, which is basically any meat that you can find within like the hoof of a cow. It's kind of like a lower quality meat, right? So it's what the poorer people would eat or what farmers would eat. But it's kind of more of like a delicacy. People get, hey, let's eat mocoto. Grandma used to make that for us. And so usually those types of things They won't make for missionaries unless they request it. So all the times that I had liver or mokoto was something that they had talked to us about beforehand, and we planned it out. Like, yeah, like when we have lunch at your house, let's eat cow hoof. And it was definitely, you know, I don't know. You don't know what cow hoof tastes like until you taste it, and you go, oh yeah, that's definitely cow hoof. I can see, there's no doubt in my mind, eating that again, I would be able to recognize that as cow hoof.
Rice and beans. I hope you like them because you're going to eat them every day. Usually, so down in Brazil, you eat lunch with the members. You don't eat dinner with them usually. And so that's like their big meal of the day down in Brazil. So it's usually like rice, beans, some type of meat. Usually it's a chicken because it's kind of cheaper. And then like a little salad or something. They'd give you like juice or soda, usually Guaraná. It's a super good Brazilian soda. Yeah, like there's a lot of different foods down there. They think we're kind of weird with some of the things we eat here in America. You'll get a lot of people that think you just eat McDonald's every day. They're just like, oh, all you guys eat is like hamburgers and hot dogs. It's like, no, we do eat other stuff, I promise. Or they think that all of our food is in like cans because we have a ton of canned food here. It's like, no, we can get it in a can or we can get it fresh. Like, we have both options, I promise. Because down in Brazil, they have like street fairs and stuff that you can go to and, you know, get your fresh produce and everything. And those are really fun to go to. You just walk through them and get some fresh fruit, some fresh vegetables. They have like little, what are they called? They're called pastel, which is kind of like, it's like fried dough with some sort of stuffing inside. So like you can get like ground beef, you can get cheese, whatever. And I would just go to these things just to get those. Like once a week, I'd go and get those with a drink that's called caldo de cana. Basically, they take sugar cane and they like put it in a press, and you drink the liquid that comes out. So it's like pure sugar in just like a cup, and it's like super, super good. Weird things I ate. Everyone wants to know this one too. They have a bean stew down there called feijoada. It's a slave dish, like historically, that's become like the national dish of Brazil. Basically, you take like some black beans and meat and just put it together. And what you get is what you get. Most of the time, you're pretty safe with it. You get like bacon in it. You get like short ribs and just other small like chunks of meat that are normal chunks. But in my first day, I remember we went to this lady's house, and again, it was a poorer family, so they didn't have the money to buy the super nice cuts of meat to throw in there. I get this big, like, it honestly just like looked like a slab of like Jello, kind of. It's like this big triangle shape of Jello. I'm kind of just like eating it, and pretty soon I find out that what I was eating was a pig ear. I was like, okay, that was kind of weird. I don't know if I could have eaten it before, if I would have known what it was. But that was one of the weird things I ate. But the worst thing I ate in my mission was something called buchada. And basically, it's the intestines and stomach of a goat, just like boiled and served to us. I remember we walk into this house, and the members had made it. They were from the Northeast too, so they were already used to eating that kind of stuff. They enjoyed eating it, and they're like, let's watch the two Americans squirm as they eat it. So they purposely like invited us over just to feed us this, just to watch our faces as we ate it. And they also had like a backup plan of chicken in the oven because they knew we wouldn't like it. But I'll never forget, we start getting close to this house, and we just start smelling this crazy weird smell. We're like, what in the world is that? Something died. And as we get closer to the house, the smell just gets stronger and stronger. We're like, oh no, what are we doing here? Walk into the house. My companion's like, do you guys like smell it? Did something die around here? Like, no, that's dinner, elders. Like, from then it's just like, our faces, it was like pale. We're like, oh no, what's going on? And so she opens up her little pressure cooker pan, and we see this ball thing hanging out in the pot, and it kind of looks like an alien. I'm not gonna lie, it's just like this weird looking thing, and we're like, we're gonna eat that. It's like, what is going on here? And so like we both took like tiny little pieces of this goat stomach, and it was nasty. Like I was pretty good about like trying food more than once in my mission, but never again will I taste bouchada in my life. So if a member offers that to anybody going there, just tell them you're allergic to goat stomach. You'll be fine. It was really bad. Yeah, Brazilian pizza is great. It's all done in like those fire ovens, firewood. That came out really weird. Wood fire ovens. And, you know, every night you get home, you're hungry. You ate your lunch, but you get home at like 9:30, and you're ready to eat again, but you don't want to cook anything, and you don't have that much food in your house anyways down in Brazil, because you don't cook for yourself that much, at least in my mission. So you just call up a pizza, and you know, it's there in 20 minutes, and you're ready to go for the rest of the night.
So you're gonna eat tons of beans and rice and chicken, and they really like goat as well. So I love beans and rice. It's like my favorite thing in the world. They have different kinds of beans. They have black beans. They have just traditional feijão. That's what you call beans. But sometimes they'll make you lasagna, and the lasagna is different than our lasagna. So it's like the traditional noodle, you know, and they put ham, and then they have this cheese. Their cheese is a little bit different than our cheese, but then they put ketchup on top of it. So you have lasagna with ketchup. They eat ketchup with everything, with their spaghetti, with their pizza. Oh, and their pizza has corn on it. They love to eat corn on everything as well. And eggs. So you have hamburgers with eggs on it. You have pizza with eggs on it. You have everything with eggs on it. And they love their bread. They eat bread for breakfast and dinner. But I think one of my favorite meals is called acarajé, which is just like, it's something in the Bahia, like they eat. And it's just, so it's beans that they crushed, basically, and they make bread out of it, like a bread. And they put shrimp and who knows what else in it. But it was like super good, super unhealthy. But overall, I miss the food of Brazil. It's like my favorite. But yeah.
The most common Brazilian foods was the beans and the rice, and then there's always some kind of a meat, but it depends on what the meat is. In Ji-Paraná, it was mostly beef. In Maués, it was fish. Yeah, they're right on the river. Literally everybody was a fisherman. You could pull in a fish about that big, and you could buy one for about 7 reais. And that's about a 4-kilo fish, about 8 to 10 pounds of fish. So they really made good fish. It was really, really good stuff. Tambaqui is one of the more common fish that they eat. It's that big one. I've heard stories of 50 or 60 pound ones. So you're talking a fish about that big. Also, it's really nice about that fish is it doesn't have spines or anything. It doesn't have the little tiny bones that we have here in the trout. That one at least has ribs. So it's like you just slide the rib out of the meat and you've got a chunk of meat. It looks like chicken. It's about the size of a chicken breast, but it is really good. It's a really juicy meat. So fish, one of the other kind of a weird one that I had was the cow intestine up north by Venezuela. They just kind of made it into a soup with the macaroni, and you really couldn't tell the difference between the noodle and the intestine other than the taste. So it's just like, it's kind of a weird thought, but you get used to it. There are a couple places that I would eat liver, which at first I didn't like it that much. It kind of has a weird aftertaste, but there's other places where they make it really good. And in Cruzeiro do Sul, it was a lot of chicken. In Manaus and Cruzeiro, it was a lot of chicken and pasta. But then you'd also run across other stuff. Vatapá is something that they have from Bahia down towards the south of Brazil. It's kind of a bread type pudding. I didn't care for it too much because they like to put pepper on it and the spices, which I was not too much of a fan. But when they put it in front of you, you just eat it. And after a while, you don't even notice it anymore. It just gets really good. But one of my favorites was something they called feijoada. It's a black bean stew. They will literally, it's like they throw the whole pig into this stew. They'll put pig ears, pig intestine, pig meat, everything in there. They'll throw in the beans. They make this really, really good sauce that goes with the beans. And then they also throw like hot dog, bratwurst, and everything into this stew. And then when you get that out, you put that on a big old serving of rice. Just throw it on top, mix it all together, eat that with banana and farinha, which is like a cornstarch thing. You just kind of cut your banana up, get a chunk of banana, the rice, the feijoada. It is so good. It's kind of a bland taste. It is so good though. They're very versatile. They will make a dessert out of literally everything. I'd never tried sweetened like avocado as a dessert. I didn't know you could. I always ate it as guacamole. But they would put it in and make like a cream, a mousse out of it. And it was really good. There's a lot of fruits that you could be walking down the road and you can pull a fruit off of the tree and eat it. There's a lot of that, especially caju, mangoes. There's one that they call carambola, star fruit. It's just good stuff. They kind of advise you to stay away from it, but it's impossible to. You just got to pick who you got to buy it from. There's those people that's like, they don't keep it very clean or anything. You can see the dead cockroaches on the floor right there. It's just kind of a nasty place. And then there's the areas where like they're obviously trying to keep it clean. And they're usually pretty good about keeping it clean. So I mean, I never had too much problem buying from the street vendors. I would usually buy the picolé, that little ice cream thing, or I would buy, they would do the same thing with homemade ice cream bars on the popsicle sticks. So I would buy that stuff. I would buy, they call it pão de queijos, cheese bread rolls, about that big. You can buy like 4 of them for $1. And they're pretty good. They drink a lot of soda and a lot of juice down there. Not so much milk, but a lot of soda and a lot of juice.
One of the things in Fortaleza that I love the most, I miss the most so much, is the fruit. They have so many different types of fruit, even compared to other places in Brazil. They have a huge concentration because they're in the tropics. One of my favorites, I love passion fruit, maracujá. Oh, is it amazing. Be careful drinking the juice because it will make you sleepy, very sleepy. And so when members give it to you during lunch, just be aware. I loved it and I drank as much as I could, but I was so sleepy afterwards. So anyway, so that's something to look out for. Goiaba, oh, excellent. Guava in Spanish, but they have it everywhere. And they make this weird paste stuff. It's called goiabada. And I actually finally found it here in Provo. So if you're going, and you're near a little market, a Mexican market or a Latino market, many times they'll have them. And you taste a little bit. It's kind of weird, but when you have it with whipped cream on top, even the non-sweetened, just the cream, oh, it's amazing. And so they have lots of fruit, lots of juice. Many times they'll either offer you soda for lunch, for a drink, or they'll make actual juice, and it's incredible. So lots and lots of fruit. I mean, I can't even go acerola, jaca, there's so many types. Weirdest, I just talked about one of my areas in Maranguape and the area Tabatinga. Every Friday, we had Noites Familiares, which are their version of family nights. There, they do them more as a group instead of just a family. But to that area, they had decided that they were going to do theirs on Friday, which is fine, it's great. We would get together and we would have churrasco, or Brazilian barbecue, and it would be coração de boi, which is bull heart. Oh, I love it so much. It's amazing. So don't be afraid of it. And then we would also drink tereré, which is similar to mate or chimarrão in the rest of Brazil and rest of Latin America, except the way that we drank it tererê was how they do it in Manaus, which is with cold lime juice. And so when you have it and you have it mixed in with this weird, it's like chopped up and dried alfalfa in a cup. And at first you'll be like, this is kind of weird and strange. But the tererê, oh, it is glorious. And I love it a lot. It's one of my favorite things from there.
Food is good. I had no problems with food my entire mission. I mean, I got sick a few times, but I've also been sick since I've gotten home from other foods. But yeah, their food is wonderful. I love, it's called feijoada. It's like the best food in the world. And I wish I could have some right now. It's awesome. They have black beans. They have other just different types of beans that they'll serve with rice. And feijoada as well, that's a black bean kind of mixture with like pork and some other meats. So yeah, they'll put that with rice separately on a plate, and they'll just put everything right in the middle of the table, and you'll just, you know, self-serve yourself. They actually have they call it selfie-service, like they say it with their Brazilian accent. But using our American word self-service, they say selfie-service. And so yeah, you'll see a lot of restaurants that say self-service on the outside of them in English. And so yeah, that's where you go. You can just, you know, you probably won't be eating at a lot of restaurants, maybe on P-Days sometimes, but yeah, you just get your beans, put it on a plate, get your rice, maybe your mashed potatoes, and a meat. Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. Their juices are so good. We don't even have them here in the United States. I've been looking for them since I've gotten back, and I can't find all of them. There's a few that I've been able to find, but just like the pulp. But my favorite, I'm gonna go like make a list of my fruits in my fruit juices right now. So my first fruit juice would be, it's called Graviola, or yeah, Graviola. I don't know how you say it in English, but yeah, Graviola. So good. I'm pretty sure that when Eve partook of the fruit, she took that fruit because it's delicious. I love Graviola. So yeah, it's like a green fruit on the outside, but on the inside it's white, and it's heavenly. Lehi probably was eating that fruit and sharing it with his family. For real, it's so good. And the juice is marvelous. Whenever they make their juices, they're all pure fruit juices. They sometimes will use pulp, but that's still 100% juice, and it's thicker. And sometimes they even put milk with it, but it's just so good. So yeah, Graviola. Second would be Maracujá, which is passion fruit juice. We have like here in the United States some forms of passion fruit juice, but it's just not the same because it's all with preservatives. So down in Brazil, they have just straight passion fruit and passion fruit juice. It's so delicious. I can't describe the taste, but I guess if I was to compare it, it'd be like a mixture of like apple, an orange, and some other citrus fruit, like a grapefruit maybe. I don't know, but it's just so good. So yeah, super tasty. So yeah, Graviola, Maracujá, which is passion fruit juice, and then Acerola. I forgot what it's called. It's a form of cherry. We don't really have a lot here in the United States. It's called Barbados cherry, I think. But it's, yeah, Acerola is also very good. It's like a mixture between an orange and a cherry, but it's delicious. So yeah, drinking the pure juice is so good. And even the ice cream that they have, you can't find it here. Like, I was with my mission buddies and my return mission President Bigelow, that you'll probably hear about at some point. Yeah, and he was telling us that, you know, he had to import it. So use it up while you can. Drink it every day. Get those vitamins in your body because they are just fabulous. But yeah, there's another thing that's native to the Northeast called treloso. It's in São Paulo, which is in the southern missions of Brazil, they have what's called traquina, which is they're types of cookies. So traquina in the south and treloso in the northeast, and they're good. They're They're actually, I like them. Some missionaries might not have. I think the missionaries from the south, they're like, oh, I want my traquinas. And I was like, well, these trelosos are just so good, and I'd be eating them. So yeah, we would eat quite a bit of those. You might have to say goodbye to, normal homogenized milk, because once you go down there, their milk is in boxes. It's not bad, so you'll get used to it as long as you refrigerate it, But it lasts forever, so you get one of those boxes of milk, and it doesn't go bad, ever. Isn't that crazy? So, yeah, just be prepared.
People talk about food all the time. I'll talk about food. So common dish is rice and beans. South American mission, that's how it goes. You get rice and beans. In Fortaleza, if you're in poorer parts, you will usually get some beef and chicken with rice and beans as a typical lunch. But also kind of particular to that area is there are some dishes that are particular to the area. One is called buchada, and they basically take an ox stomach and they fill it with the intestines and the insides of the ox and with rice and a sauce and stuff, and they sew it up and they cook it for hours and then they eat it. And I honestly couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, but I couldn't make myself try it. But they always said if you cook it right, it's delicious. So I would encourage you to try it if you can. I did try something called panelada, which is basically that, but in like stew form. And that was, I'm going to be honest, that was decent. It was not bad. I'm pretty adventurous with eating, so that was pretty good. Once they gave us, they called it tripa frita. It was pieces of fried intestine, and they'd cut it up into pieces and fry it like a French fry, and they'd give you a bowl, and you'd eat it. And I didn't know what they were, and I was like, yeah, this is great. And they were like, yeah, that's intestine. And I was, oh, it's good. And I kept eating, but after a little while I had to stop because I was like, okay, maybe I can't do this. What other foods? Fruit. You are going to get lots of fruit and juice in Ceará, in Fortaleza, because there are so many types of fruit. I would try everything, and honestly, I'm telling you, you got to try it. If you go there, you have to try all the fruit. Jamba, jaca, pitomba, pitaya, siriguela. None of these names make sense, but if you hear of a fruit and someone gives it to you to try it, just try it. You can't lose anything. It's awesome. And they make the best juices and like smoothies there as well. Like they call them vitaminas. They're vitamins. It's just a smoothie. It's awesome. They're so good. And while you're there, you have to try the acai. That's been a trend around Utah lately. Like they have the acai bowls, but it's not as good as the Amazon ones, as my Amazonian companions would tell me. But it's pretty good in Fortaleza. It's like almost nothing better at the end of a day of working the streets than like a bowl of acai. Another thing about snacks there, so they sell like wafer cookies, like the wafer cookies in like these packs in tons of different flavors. They're delicious. I love them. And they sell like kind of cream sandwich cookies as well in like sleeves, and everyone eats those. It's like the snack that everyone eats. And it actually got so bad to a point where our mission president banned us from eating the cookies because missionaries were eating too many cookies and like not eating enough real food, that they were getting unhealthy. But those are like the snack. Get plenty of those while you're there. Just don't overdo it because you need energy and real food and stuff like that. But I love those.
There's a food down there called buchada, and it's a goat stomach. With a blood pudding inside and some other things. And I think it's fried. I never had it, actually. I wanted to try it. And the members said that they would make it for me one day, but they were messing with me because they thought that there's no way I would want to eat buchada. But, that's a regional food, pretty typical of the Northeast. And I never got to try it, but I've heard depending on how you make it, it can either be okay or awful. And but that's from a bunch of American guys, they weak stomachs anyways. Another funny thing, they don't do hot sauce. None of the food you will eat in the Northeast is hot. They have one bottle of hot sauce. It's made from Malagueta peppers, I think is what it is. And funny story about that sauce is that it's actually got a threshold in which It doesn't matter how much more you put on, it won't get any hotter. So if you really want to impress the members, you have a few drops, bring yourself up to that threshold, and then start dumping it on. You know, you can have a whole spoonful of it with one bean, and put it down, and they will think you are like some fire-mouthed, you know, Aztec god or something coming into their place, destroying food and drinking hot sauce bottles. But really, it doesn't even get hotter than, you know, a few drops. It's really interesting. I've made some interesting friends. Actually, we went into a bar. The bar served soups on this, you know, and beer. And to kind of make a splash with the people there, we were there with a member. We were eating soup, and to make a splash with the guys there, we just started dumping hot sauce in our food, and it got us some attention. We didn't, you know, take anybody to church from there, but you know, we tried. Something that's really great are the fruits, and you'll have amazing juices down there. And you'll never have better juices. Now, they put a lot of sugar in it. It's like sugar, 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 and you're like, and it's more sugar. But it's great. You know, you'll blend up guava. If you don't like guava now, you'll like it then. It's fantastic. I used to have guavas for breakfast every morning just because I love them. You know, the Brazilians don't really have a breakfast. They don't really believe in it too much. Not, at least not the Brazilians that I knew. They'll have a little bit of something sometimes. Most of them will skip it, but you'll have a large lunch. In my mission, there was no dinner, so we kind of had a 2-hour lunch, because we typically show up for lunch, and that's when they'd start making it, you know. And so we'd go out and we'd kind of knock on the doors, talk to the neighbors and stuff, and come back, and we'd eat some food, because by the time dinner happened, you know, dinner is like you go by a lunch stand, not lunch stand, a snack stand. They call snacks lunchy, and so you go by a lunchy stand, and you buy like a little, like, oh, it's so good. It's like shredded chicken, like deep fried in like a batter. It's called a coxinha, and like if you haven't had a coxinha, you're wasting your mission and your life and your happiness and all your future prospects of having such. You will eat coxinha maybe every day for the first 6 months of your mission until you get grossed out by them, and then you'll buy a different thing. They're called salgados, and they're great. You'll like them. They're really good. Another thing that they have is acai. Acai is a dark purple berry from the Amazonas, and it's really good, but it's also not naturally sweet. Actually, in the north, they eat it with fish and stuff, which doesn't make any sense to me, but it's like an ice cream. It's like a blended ice cream, and it's really good, and you'll love it too. You have to eat that every time you baptize somebody. It's a tradition that you must carry on. Yeah, it's good. Get it with powdered milk on top, granola, banana. You can thank me later.
The food. The one advice I'd give is to just try everything, because you know, there's a lot you could miss out on if you don't try stuff. You're gonna eat rice and beans every day, which is, you know, I loved it. I can eat rice and beans every day for the rest of my life. It was so good. One thing that I thought I wouldn't like, but I ended up liking, was fish with rice and beans with a fresh banana, like all mixed, like all on the same plate. It was just super good. I'm not a fish person, and I didn't think a fresh banana would be good with rice and beans, but it was just super good. So definitely try that if the members give it to you. There's a lot of favorite foods. There's tons of fruits that you never see here in the States. So like what I like to do is, if I had a little extra money, I would just go to the store and like get one of like a fruit that I hadn't tried before, and would go home and try it. And you know, if I didn't like it, whatever, I just give it to my companion or whatever. But it's just really a fun experience to try new things. One thing that I feel most missionaries like is maracujá, or passion fruit. It's so good. People say it puts you to sleep, but I don't know, it never put me to sleep. They make juice out of it. They make mousse, or I guess mousse in English. It's just so good. It's tangy. It's kind of sour, but I don't know. I can't describe it. It's just you have to try it.
Well, I absolutely love the food in Brazil, especially in Rio Grande do Sul. It's so good. Like I could
I would be fine just eating the beans and rice they gave me every single day because it was good. It was very simple but very good. The food in Rio Grande do Sul is generally pretty simple. It's not spicy generally. Kind of the staple of every dish is you'll have your rice and black beans. And then with that, you'll often have some sort of meat. You'll have sausage or like some chicken or beef. And there's a lot of salads, like, well, not as we usually think of salads. They have like a lot of potato salad. And you'll also have like on the side sliced tomatoes and onions. And you'll put those on top of your beans and rice and like eat it all together. So some things that are unique to Rio Grande do Sul, the kind of the rodizio tradition and churrasco, which we see in restaurants like Tucanos and whatnot, actually originated in the region of Rio Grande do Sul. They have tons of cattle there, and so tons of really good meat. And so sometimes on Sundays or on special days, members would they would make that kind of meat for us. A lot of people have what's called a churrasquera in their backyard, which is kind of like having a barbecue in your backyard here. But it's like a big, like brick kind of fireplace almost, but it's lifted up. And so you'll stick huge chunks of meat on these spits, and they'll put them over the fire, and they'll leave them there for about an hour, and then it's very good. And so that was always really popular with the missionaries whenever the members would do that. I liked that a lot. One of my favorite dishes that people would make, it's very unique to Rio Grande do Sul, is called carretero. And so carretero, it originated with these cowboys who, like 100 years ago, would be traveling around the countryside in Rio Grande do Sul. So since they were traveling, they couldn't bring like fresh meat with them. So they would bring what's known in Brazil as charqui, which is basically like beef jerky, but it's a lot thicker and meatier. But so they'd bring that around with them, and when they'd stop for the night, and after a long day of working out in the fields, they would make a fire and put kind of like a big pot cauldron type thing over the fire, like hang it up on a little tripod, and they would fry inside of it this charqui, this meat, along with tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, and a few other things. They'd fry it up until it was nice and good, and then they would throw in the rice. And they'd fry the rice, just the grains, the dry grains, along with it for a little bit, and then they'd throw in water and just let it boil out until the rice was ready. And so you end up with this, like a pot full of rice, but with lots of meat and like some fried vegetables mixed in, and it's really, really good. And people eat that with, like, you'll put sliced cabbage on top of it and eat that, and it is really good. That was one of my favorite dishes from the region that people would make. Another food that was very popular in the winter, especially when it's a little bit colder, is lasagna that they make there. And the lasagna in Brazil is different from the lasagna here. They didn't really use like red sauce. They used a lot of meats like ham and chicken and turkey and stuff, and lots of cheese, and that their lasagnas were really good. And they would also make I think my favorite dessert was definitely pudim. Pudim is a little bit like flan, if you've ever had that, but it's better. It's way better. It's really good.
So there is like the typical meal in Brazil, which is like what everybody eats every day when there's no special event, which is rice and beans, some kind of fried chicken or maybe like fried beef or something, and a salad. Salad could be anything from just a pile of tomatoes with olive oil and vinegar and salt on it, or it could be like lettuce and tomatoes. Usually it's kind of simple, but they like season things very simply there, but it's so good. Oh my gosh. I love rice and beans. I love it. I miss it so much. They'll do a lot of pasta too, because São Paulo is kind of like New York, where it's like kind of a mixing bowl. There's just a lot of people from different backgrounds there. So there's a lot of people with like Italian background. There's some people with like I don't know, German background. There's some people who are from like the Northeast who have African descent. So you kind of get like everything mushed together. Sometimes like they have like these, they're called lancherias. It's just like a place you can go like on the side of the road. Sometimes it's like almost like a food truck. Sometimes it's like an actual building. And you just go and you can get different types of snacks, which are usually different types of baked or fried goods. And they have this thing called coxinha, which is the best thing in the world. It's like pulled chicken with like seasoning, and then they wrap it up in this ball of dough and fry it, and it is so delicious. They have some Arabic snacks, like things that they call esfihas, which are also like it's some kind of meat or some kind of flavoring in the middle, and then dough around it, but that's baked. They also do all these with like chocolate or like dulce de leche or whatever, and just sweet things. Pastel, which is like a calzone, except it's a thinner crust, and then just like something inside, and they fry it. It's so good. Like those things are the best. I miss them so much. Sometimes like for dessert, you'll usually get dessert because you're a missionary. I had us maid trainer. I was like, do you guys always eat dessert, or is it just because the sisters came over? Like I can't tell. And it's just because the sisters came over. But they make a lot of like, sometimes it'll be like a pudding or like a mousse. They have this fruit there called maracuja, which is like passion fruit in English. And they'll make a mousse from it, and it is so delicious. But if you eat like the straight up natural juice, it's also a natural relaxant, so it'll make you go to sleep. So be careful with that. They have something called brigadeiro, which means brigadier. It's sweetened condensed milk boiled together with chocolate powder and butter. And then you kind of let it harden, and they'll like roll it into balls and like put it with sprinkles, or they'll just eat it straight out of the bowl. It's called brigadeiro because there was this brigadier who I guess like came through Brazil conquering or something like that, and that was his favorite dessert, and everyone wanted to get on his good side, so everybody made it. And that is also very good. And they'll have like popsicles that are like brigadeiro flavored and like everything. They have something called, depends on which city you're in, they call it different things. I learned it as like gelinha, which is like little ice, and it's kind of like a Go-Gurt tube, except it's like a thin plastic tube, usually clear plastic, and then inside they can make it with water or with milk mixed with like a juice or a flavoring, and they'll just freeze it. It's really good when it's hot outside and you've been walking all day and you're dying, and you just grab one for like $1 or $2 and you just eat it, and it helps you cool down, and it's really tasty. And people will just sell things out of their house sometimes. So, I mean, you could just like buy like an ice cream from somebody's house. It's great. I love it. If you can't tell, I miss it a lot.
So some of the foods that I found most interesting, one thing I love about Brazil is their variety of fruits. So they had maracujá, they had caju, they had acerola, they had piqui, which were some very unique fruits that I had never had before. And probably the most interesting was piqui, and it smelled different. It was a smell that you were not used to, but also you couldn't bite into it because it had little spines in it. So if you bit into it, it would get stuck in those spines would get stuck in your mouth, and you'd have to go to the hospital. And so you just have to lightly roll your teeth on it. And the Midwestern part of Brazil, they love piqui. So they like to put piqui in lots of food. So that was unique for me. Something else that Rio Verde, my third area, there's a lot of pimenta, which is a red pepper that they put into a lot of food there. And most Brazilian food is fairly bland, but this pimenta that they would put in to like rice and beans made it a lot spicier, which was kind of different. Something else that I had while I was in Brazil was called Guaraná Jesus, and it was like a tutti frutti Guaraná from the northern part of Brazil. And so the missionaries really liked Guaraná Jesus. And it came in a pink and blue bottle. Yeah, there was an elder who ended up in the hospital because he bit into it, and he bit into it, and he was in the hospital and had to get the spines taken out of his mouth. we teased him a little bit after that. Brazilians love not soup, suco. Suco is juice. They love juice. So I had watermelon juice, and I had passion fruit juice, and I had cherry juice, and I had caju juice. So lots of different kinds of juices, which I really enjoyed. Pão de queijo was one of my favorite foods because it was really good. And in my last area, there was a little padaria. There was a little baked goods store, and they would sell fried pão de queijo. So we would go get that every morning, almost. Mandioca is like a potato, and they fry it, and it's yellow and kind of tastes unique, but it's really good, and I really liked that. We had that with almost every meal. On their hamburgers and on their pizza, they have this green sauce that it's like a green cheese sauce, and they put it on everything, or at least their hamburgers, hot dogs, and pizza, and they put corn on their hamburgers, hot dogs, and pizza, which I had also never seen before. They would create like a black bean stew with all the leftover parts of meat. So there were a few times where I found like a pig's tail or a pig's ear in it, and it all tasted really good because they mixed it up and put a lot of spices in, but you knew when you were having that it was the leftover part of the meat at the end of the week or whatever. But feijoada, yeah. I mean, they drink a lot of soda, a lot of Coca-Cola, a lot of Guaraná, a lot of Fanta, a lot of soda for every meal. They ate a lot of fish. I did eat fish eyes once. I was dared to eat fish eye, which was not my most favorite experience, but there's a lot of fish that are eaten, and yeah.
What you eat every day is rice and beans. Just that. You get really used to it to the point that whenever I eat it again, my body has this reaction of like, this is what I'm supposed to be eating. Well, why was I eating anything else? Because I just got so used to it. I literally ate it every day. But and Brazilians will say that too, that they're like, if they don't eat rice and beans, they don't feel like they've eaten a meal. It doesn't feel full unless they've eaten rice and beans. They also would usually have pasta with it and some kind of meat most of the time, usually chicken. They have, they had rubacão, that's just kind of like a rice and cheese and like this certain kind of meat. They call it charqui. I think someone told me it was horse meat, but I don't think that's true. I don't know. And then the craziest thing they have in the Northeast is something called buchada, and it's literally like the stomach of a goat, and they put all of the like intestines and like goat organs, and they cook it in it, and it smells like the worst thing ever. I never actually tried it. I almost did. We had it planned, this thing where I was going to eat it, and then I got transferred. But everybody swears it's just horrible, except for the people that make it, and they're like, no, mine is the one that's not horrible. And then I never actually tried it, so I don't know. But it doesn't sound too great. I think though the best thing in the Northeast was the fruit. They just have all the tropical fruits, even stuff I'd never heard of before. Some of it's kind of not great. Some of it's really, really good. And something I really miss about it is that everywhere you went, from the fanciest restaurant to like someone's little hole-in-the-wall place, if you order juice, they make it. They go and they put the fruit in the blender and the sugar and the water, and they bring it out to you just like that. So it's like fresh juice everywhere, and it's the best. So I really miss that. I was hoping they would do that in Africa when I went to Africa, but they don't. It's a Brazil thing. And also it's a North Brazil thing. They have this fruit called açaí, and they eat it like it's a frozen ice cream kind of dessert thing. It's purple and just like a frozen slushy thing, and they put sweetened condensed milk on it and bananas and granola, and it's the best. And the first time you eat it, it's like this is weird and you can't handle it. And then once you get used to it, it's super addicting, and they don't have it here. They have acai like imitations, like in Jamba Juice sort of, and it's not the same thing. And those are the things I miss the most. Probably the fruit. Also, they have Padaria is like little bakeries on every corner, and you can get fresh bread every day and stuff like that. It's really great.
One of my favorite foods there is probably the one that's most common, which is rice, beans, and chicken. And that sounds really simple. They also have a really good salad. It's made with beets and potatoes and carrots, a lot of mayonnaise, and they put that on top of it. But it's like the perfect mix. They sort of discovered it. They also put macaroni too with it too, or spaghetti noodles, and they call it macaroni. And they sort of mix that all together, just like the perfect mix. Like, it's just so good. I really would like that. I have not been able to find anyone that's been able to make it quite like they do. So it's not just rice and beans. It's the way they make it that makes it really good. They also have something there called salgados, which are deep fried things of bread around like meat, and that's something you'll have a lot of snacks. And so those are really good to eat. And then I know in the northeast, at least, northeast part of Brazil, they make really good cakes. And so there's a lot of bakeries, and the cakes are a little bit expensive, but it's totally worth it. They have this cake that's a lot like German pancakes, if you're familiar with those. It's hard to describe. It's very smooth type of cake. Tastes a little bit like egg. There's a lot of egg in it, but very good. It's hard to describe. It's called bolo mole, or lazy cake. So there's definitely some unique things about it, about the food there.
Love the food. It's so good, especially in the south. A little bit more about Porto Alegre, or about Rio Grande do Sul. It's cowboy country. The Gaúchos are the cowboys. And so there's a lot of like plains and cattle. There are also some mountains, but their churrasco is really big there. It's their barbecue. They have these spits that they put the meat on. It's like 2-pronged spits, and they put them on, and they put the meat on the spits, and they put some really big grains of salt on it. That's how they season it. And then they stick it, there's like the area where they grill or cook the meat is like there's a bar for the spit to rest on, and then there are 2 holes on the opposite side that the 2 prongs sit on. So you stick them in there, and you can flip them over every once in a while so that it gets cooked all the way through. But oh man, it was so good. It's pretty similar to Tucanos. If you're familiar with Tucanos, that's very similar to the churrasco in the areas I served in, which is really good. Beyond that, we had a lot of chicken and beans and rice and potato salad and cooked kale, and they also would do a lot of, everyone gave us desserts. I don't know if that was just because we were the missionaries and we were visiting, but the desserts were really good too. They had, I don't know what to call them in English, but we had mousse, and it was various flavors. It could be mousse de maracujá, which is like passion fruit, or morango, which is strawberry. Those were 2 of my favorites. They also had pudim, which is like flan, and I didn't think I was going to like it, but I ended up loving it. There's also arroz doce, which was a sweet rice, and I guess it's like rice pudding, but I'm not sure what rice pudding is otherwise. Something else about Porto Alegre. It's well known for the doces de Pelotas. Pelotas is a city, it's pretty close to Rio Grande, and they just make a ton of sweets there. A lot of sweets and jams and jellies and desserts, and they're really good. They're well known too. It's, I could keep going about the food. The food was so good. It was really yummy. I know that some people would get sick of beans and rice, but I miss beans and rice. It's so good. Beans and rice with some sort of meat. Most of the time it was chicken. And most people would have like a small salad, whether it was like tomatoes and lettuce, or beets and carrots, or any kind of a mixture of those, or I guess that was the main part. Sometimes they would have fruit, but not very often. They mostly had fruit as dessert, so it was good too.
It's all really tasty. Oh, and I learned to love star fruit there. I hadn't ever had star fruit before, but in my last area in Guaíba, there was a member who their family would give us or would make us churrasco every time we ate at their house on Sunday. And there was one time where they said, "Hey, we have this star fruit tree. Have some star fruit." We're like, "Okay." So we started eating it on the road, and I was like, "Oh, this is some of the best fruit I've ever had. I love this." It was really good.
Get used to rice and beans because you're going to have them every day. Most days, I should say. If you're in a particularly rich area, sometimes they have spaghetti instead of rice and beans, and that's pretty good. But still, most days you'll end up eating rice and beans. The members of the church will most likely feed you every day. They'll feed you a lunch. Most wards and branches have lunch calendars that they go around. In Belo Horizonte, when I was there, we were not allowed to eat dinner. We just ate a very large lunch with members at around noon, and we worked for 8 hours. And so get used to that too, because dinner is not a big deal in Brazil. It's extremely hard to teach during the lunch hour because everybody's making lunch, and nobody wants to really listen to a random visitor. But you won't find too much trouble teaching during dinner hours. Because it's not quite as big of a meal. Most people just eat leftovers for their dinner, and so no one's really preparing a dinner. People have time to sit down and listen to you during the dinner hour. Interestingly enough, a lot of members would ask me, like, "Oh, have you had feijoada?" And I'd say, "Yes, I've had feijoada." Every single member that's fed me has asked me that. It's this bean and pork dish that also goes over rice, but it's made with black beans and lots of interesting parts of the pig, like nose and the foot, and just lots of, like, the ears are sometimes in there. Lots of interesting parts of the pig, and it's really good. I've never actually eaten pig ear. Most of the times they'll take that out, but sometimes they'll cook it with it in. But even after a year and a half on mission, members were still asking me if I had eaten feijoada, and I was just, yes, sister, I've eaten feijoada. Guaraná is one of the most popular sodas in Brazil. Yeah, most likely you will be fed Guaraná at least 5 times a week for lunch. Just get used to that. People like Guaraná down there. Also, you should get used to large portions of meat. It's usually like rice, beans, and meat, and that's usually it. Rice, beans, and meat, and maybe they'll have a salad, but salad is not a salad. Salad usually consists of lettuce and tomatoes. That's not a salad, but whatever. They like to call it a salad, so we'll give them that.
The food is very different. In Brazil, I probably could have taken a picture of my plate every day for lunch and it would have looked the exact same. Because we always have rice and beans, obviously, and we would have a meat, some kind of meat. Usually it's chicken, sometimes it's beef. We'd have this pasta that was like, I don't know, it's just like dry pasta with a little bit of oil on it. And then have some kind of like salad, which would be like have beets, potatoes, and carrots all boiled together and then mixed in with mayonnaise. And so that was like the average lunch. But then they also had some other things that were a little bit different, their food there. Like I remember one time I ate, I can't remember the name of it, but it's like the cow and goat intestines and their like insides. It's like boiled in this stuff and it smells awful. It just, it reeks. But I remember this lady had it for lunch one time. I'm like, and it was interesting. I tried to eat it, but I couldn't hold it down. But I mean, I could swallow it, but that was just, I could only take one bite. I couldn't eat anymore. They just have different things like that, or like they eat a lot of like chicken feet. So I've eaten chicken feet and yeah. And they have, What are some other things that are different? They have a ton of fruits though. That's good. They have a ton of fruits I've never even seen before, and
Are they good?
yeah, they're really good. They eat a lot of fruit there as well. So the main meal is lunch, and so you have a huge lunch, and then they eat dinner like later at night. It's like 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock or 9 at night, and it's just something smaller for dinner. Oh, they're tiny. They thought I was a giant. I'm only 5'6" or 5'7", and they would look at me like I was 7 feet tall, because everyone there is a lot shorter, and they're like toothpicks, you know? And so, yeah, Americans usually stand out quite a bit.